Good evening. My name is Luke Hattelstad. I'm the Public Information Officer for Arapahoe County, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's Conversations with a Commissioner. Tonight we are featuring Commissioner Jeff Baker from District 3. We are here to update you on county business and to take any questions you have about various aspects of life in the county. I think most of our attendees probably live in District 3, so that Commissioner Baker should be able to answer quite a few questions for you. This is part of our ongoing series of virtual town halls, which we've instituted this year during the COVID crisis. One thing to keep in mind is that tonight's event, we do not have any medical experts on the call, so we aren't going to be able to answer any specific COVID questions. We may be able to answer some general ones, but for that kind of information, I would encourage you to join us tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, same dial-in number, same website info for a COVID specific town hall that's focused on our school districts in the county. That we will have experts from Tri-County Health and All Health Mental Health Network. We will have superintendents from half a dozen area school districts, and then of course we'll have all 5 commissioners online as well. So we'd love for you to join us tomorrow for that one. And then for our next conversation events, we are going to have 2 next week. The first one is Tuesday night at 7 o'clock with Commissioner Bill Holen from District 5. And then on Thursday night at 6 o'clock, we're going to have Commissioner Kathleen Conti from District 1. So these are all events that are designed to give you a chance to get a little closer with your specific reps. And with that, I will introduce Commissioner Baker.
Good evening, Luke. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Baker. I am the County Commissioner for District 3. That is the eastern portion of Arapahoe County, and it includes areas east of Parker Road to the south, east of Gun Club Road to the north, and it includes the communities of Watkins, Bennett, Beyer, Strasburg, and Deer Trail. I'm very happy to join you tonight and give you an opportunity to ask me questions. I was elected in 2016 and took office in January of 2017. I'm coming to the end of my first 4-year term, and I am running for a re-election. I am no stranger to Arapahoe County, having served the last 4 years as county commissioner. Prior to that, I had 18 years as an employee of Arapahoe County in 2 different departments. I started working for Arapahoe County in 1998 as a member of the Human Services team. That's the department that helps with our children, county children, and older adults providing services. And then I eventually moved to Facilities and Fleet Management, where I spent the next 13 years taking care of every Arapahoe County building, the maintenance, the cleanliness. I was a facilities manager for Arapahoe County. I'm just glad to have everyone here. Next slide, please. And just, again, want to welcome everyone. As Luke will mention, if you want to ask me a question, you can hit *3 to get into the line to ask a question. So that's *3. Again, glad to have everyone here tonight. Next slide. I want to give some general information about things going on in the county, and then we'll open it up for questions. We have one more election to get through in 2020, and that's the general election of November 3rd. The ballots for this election were mailed out on October 9th, and you can get more information about our election at arapahoevotes.com. We're committed in Arapahoe County to having a good election process and increasing communication with voters, particularly this year when we're likely to see a very large turnout. We already had a record high turnout for the June 30th primary, and we're anticipating even higher numbers of voters to vote in November. You can also go to arapahovotes.com to check your registration status, to find your nearest voting center or drop box, and get more information on all aspects of the election. I will urge everyone to sign up for something called ballot tracking, and you can learn more about that at Arapahoe Votes. I learned through an email to me the day before I got my ballot that my ballot was on its way. I have it right here. I've got most of it voted, but I had a couple of ballot measures that I wanted to look up and make sure that I had the right idea before I filled in that little oval box on the ballot. And when I drop it off in a drop box, I prefer to do that, drop it off in a ballot drop box. As soon as it's received, I'll get another email letting me know that it has been received by our clerk and recorder's office. So I think that's well worth the effort to sign up for ballot tracking. Next slide, please. Another important thing going on right now is the census, the 2020 census. Every 10 years, the United States is required by law to conduct a census. This data helps us to determine number of congressional seats and also how to draw the lines between the boundaries of the congressional seats, and also other elected offices such as the state legislators and county commissioners. Population and number of registered voters in each district is important to have an equal amount so that each of our elected representatives are representing approximately the same number of registered voters. It also directly impacts funding that we receive from the federal government or from the federal government through the state for many of our services, such as economic development, housing assistance, transportation improvements, and other critical services like human services, my old department. Our service area includes many diverse populations and diverse geography, from urban to rural, from suburban to different housing areas and things like that. It really is an important thing that we get an accurate count. And it's a unique challenge, especially this year, as we are in the midst of a pandemic, trying to count as many of our citizens as possible. These efforts so far have resulted in a 76.1% response rate, and that's pretty good, but it's not 100%. I would love to have 100% count. I don't know if any community is close to having a 100% count, but we are focused on trying to reach what's called the hard to count communities in Aurora, Englewood, and Sheridan. It's only a couple weeks left before this will end, unless the federal government does extend it. And I know they have been talking about extending it simply because the response rate has not been what they expected, and they're attributing that to the coronavirus pandemic. But if you've already taken part, we just want to say thank you. And you've done your part to make sure that Arapahoe County and all of our towns and cities receive the funding from the federal government and the state government that we need to serve that number of residents. Next slide, please. I'm going to take a sip of water here, sorry. I wanted to talk a little bit about our open spaces master plan. I was employed by the Arapahoe County when the voters approved a 1/4-cent sales tax that funds parks, trails, and open spaces. And it will expire. It was renewed. It started in 2003. It was renewed in 2013, and it will expire in 2021 unless the voters agree to reinstitute it. Again, it's a 1/4 cent sales tax, and it helps a lot of different parks and recreational spaces. Now that the program's been around for a few years, we want to plan for the future. More than 62% of the funds are shared back with our towns and cities and special districts. They can also apply for grant funding for projects, open space, park trail projects that they have planned, and we do share back with them. This master plan will create a strategy for how we can preserve open space in the county and examine how we care for and enhance the lands that we've currently acquired and set aside for preservation. And it will help make the case for extending the tax into the future. So there will be opportunities to engage where we value citizen comment and input on the open spaces. And so look for opportunities to do that, to engage with our open spaces team and find out more ways in which we can continue serving the public in that respect. Next slide, please. Another master plan. We have two master plans going on right now. Of course, the open space master plan that I just talked about and the transportation master plan. We're in the process of building out this transportation master plan. This is a subject near and dear to my heart. Since I've been a county commissioner, I have been involved in transportation issues at just about every level. And I think that I have to say this is one of my areas of interest. It's always a hot topic for anyone in the metro area who drives from point A to point B. We have congestion. We have road conditions with potholes and different aspects to negotiate, and we all have our little shortcuts that we pick out and try to use so that we can get from point A to point B in time. As the county continues to grow, which we anticipate it will, we've got to work with our municipal partners, the city of Aurora, Englewood, Sheridan, Littleton, and Centennial, and all of the others I'm not talking about. But we need to work with all of them and our residents to ensure that we can help manage growth and traffic congestion and look for alternate modes of transportation, if that makes sense. Statewide, voters have rejected funding options based on state taxes and ballot measures. So we're trying to be creative. We've encouraged citizen participation throughout this process. We have an interactive commenting map that people have engaged in by noting where they live and where they travel to. So that's available on our website at arapahogov.com/transportation plan. People experience a lot of the congestion and safety issues can put that down on the idea wall and when they fill out the survey. If you've already done that, thank you very much. We appreciate your input. We will take a serious look at all of the comments and ideas, questions. Another thing that I'm involved in is I'm the county representative on DRCOG, which is the Denver Regional Council of Governments, which is focused on transportation issues. So that's why I take a great personal interest in this. It's my area that I believe needs to be given more emphasis to. So I can talk more about that if you have any questions about that. But for now, next slide.
Excuse me, Commissioner.
Yes.
I just wanted to jump in and tell everyone, if you're on the phone to dial and you want to ask a question of Commissioner Baker, dial *3 and that will put you through to an operator. If you are watching this online, you can submit a question via the messaging box that's on the page. And I'll make that announcement again before we go to actual questions.
Thank you, Luke. The next thing I wanted to just give a general overview about is Arapahoe County Cares. The county had it's a program that the county created that arose from the Coronavirus Relief and Economic Security Act. That's what CARES stands for, Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, that was passed by the federal government this spring. We were a direct recipient of $114.5 million from the Federal CARES Act. Of that amount, we have been sharing about 45% of these funds, or $51.6 million, with our 13 towns and cities in Arapahoe County. The amounts that we've given to them are allocated by population size, and we're using the rest of the overall amount to fund everything from making our facilities safer for citizens coming in to conduct business in our county facilities, and for our employees who are working in our facilities. And we also want to focus on our most vulnerable populations. Who are those? That's our very, very young and our very, very old, our elderly folks that are more vulnerable to, of course, the young, they're not vulnerable to the COVID, but they're vulnerable because they rely on the care of their parents or the people taking care of them who are susceptible to the COVID. So that's why we call them our most vulnerable citizens. We've already rolled out numerous programs around this, and we'll continue to do so through the end of 2020, when the federal government has set a deadline that we have to either have spent that money or return any unspent amount to the federal government. Now, there is a chance that they will extend that as well. We look to the federal government to make those decisions based on input from all over the nation, but they do listen to us here in Colorado as well. So that's a very important thing that we've been doing. Just a few statistics. To date, we've provided hundreds of county businesses with millions of dollars in grants. We've helped several hundred households with rent mortgage assistance. And we recently added an additional $500,000 to that program. We fund our nonprofit health centers, food banks, and homelessness partners to address behavioral and physical health problems, food and housing insecurity needs. We've partnered with an organization called Stride and the City of Aurora and Lincoln Health, that comes from Lincoln County Health, to offer more mobile testing sites across the county. And it's Lincoln Health that's providing the testing out in the eastern part of the eastern, more rural part of Arapahoe County that I represent. We've supported contact tracing and health departments' needs. And we've augmented the county's early warning data system. It's kind of an odd test that we do with sewage and water testing from sewage to try to anticipate a rise or fall in COVID cases from our sewage treatment plants. And that's in partnership with the University of Colorado Anschutz, first responder, community seroprevalence testing is what they call it. So it's a very interesting process that they use. We've also implemented facility improvements consistent with best practices, improving and handing out PPE, personal protective equipment, for employees and guests who come to our facility. So that's it for COVID. Next slide, please. I guess we're still talking a little bit more about CARES. Our Human Services Department. There we go. In Human Services, we've used CARES funding to create a hotel-motel voucher system for people who are experiencing homelessness. And that's as a result of COVID. or any that may need temporary housing because COVID has made it unsafe for them to live at home. And we see that with elderly folks that are more susceptible, and maybe their spouse or someone that they live with has come down with COVID. And so they need to find a place so that they're not endangering their family members there in their home. We also established a similar program to provide CARES funding to food banks, Meals on Wheels, other organizations affected by the crisis, on top of the programs that we already administer. We've used CARES funding to reimburse for behavioral and physical health organizations, for telehealth, PPE, and sanitation supplies as well. Next slide. All right, this is where I'll be talking to the folks who have pushed *3 or submitted their questions online. Luke, do you want to kick that off and see if we've got anybody waiting to ask any questions?
Yeah, I do, and I have a couple questions too. So that's more of a general county update, and I want to also dig in on some of the stuff that you work on personally, and because I know you have some pet issues that you want to talk about as well. Why don't we start again? Let's make the how to do it announcement. So if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, push *3, and you'll be directed to one of our operators who will put you in line to ask a question over the phone. And if you're on the website, you can plug in a question in the messaging box that's right there on the page. We have a couple already. Let's start with what do you think the biggest challenge is for facing those who live in the eastern part of the county?
Well, that would have to be growth, because growth is coming. And I have two different kinds of constituents. I have constituents that know growth is coming, and they're anxious. They're actually anticipating it, and they're looking at ways to help their community deal with the growth by either opening a business or being involved in the planning of their communities. The other type of constituent I have are those that are fearful of growth, don't like it. The reason they moved out to the rural part of Arapahoe County was to not live in Aurora or any one of our larger communities. They like the small town feel of those communities, and they want it to stay that way. I tell both of them that they should prepare for growth because it's coming. We have to do it responsibly. We have to make sure that they have water resources, that there are roads being planned, that there are services such as hospitals, fire, police stations, libraries, all of those amenities that make our communities a good place to live. That has to be planned. Now, this may not happen for a good while yet. It may not be right away. We can ensure water is the most important thing. We have to have enough water to support the growth of more houses in Arapahoe County. Myself and Commissioner Nancy Sharp sit on the board of the Arapahoe County Water and Wastewater Authority. And so we're involved in planning for bringing water, and we stay involved with Bennett's water program and different water authorities out there, East Cherry Creek Valley Authority and things like that, to try to make sure that there will be enough growth. But that's a consideration that would stop a development, in my view, is that I could not vote for additional development unless there was planning for water resources to be available. Does that answer the question, Luke?
It does, and it leads to a follow-up question. So as it happens, starting tomorrow, there's a construction project happening at the intersection of Quincy and Gun Club Road. They're going to be installing over between Thursday and I believe Sunday what's called a partial continuous flow intersection, which is a little difficult to describe verbally, but basically it's an intersection that keeps things moving in high traffic areas and reduces the stop and start and the left turn type stuff that can result in accidents. So what can you tell us about how that is going? And I can tell the listeners that for full information about this project, you can go to arapahoegov.com/Quincy Gun Club, all one word. And that will give you the phase layout for how they're going to do construction. But Commissioner, what can you tell us about how that project is envisioned and what it'll accomplish?
Yeah, I have to say that when I first became a commissioner, this type of intersection, the partial continuous flow intersection, was already approved by previous commissioners, the previous Board of County Commissioners, and I was a little skeptical. I have to tell you the truth. If you do go to that website that Luke gave you, you can see an actual moving diagram showing traffic flow through that intersection once it's completed, and it's fascinating. Again, I was skeptical. I sat down with our public works director at the time and the transportation manager at the time, and they explained it to me and more or less convinced me that it's going to be an improvement, one, over what we currently have at Gun Club in Quincy. That intersection was rated one of the most dangerous in the Denver metropolitan area. We had a number of fatal car crashes at that intersection. And it's an interesting intersection because you have three different jurisdictions. You have Arapahoe County, you have City of Aurora, and you have CDOT, the state Colorado Department of Transportation, that are involved in that as Gun Club going north from the intersection of Quincy is State Highway 30. So that needs to be widened. We all know that that road to the north of Quincy needs to be enlarged, and I believe it may be on the plan for the state to widen that to 4 lanes, but it's not any time in the future. I'd love to see that road widened sooner. A lot of people say, what's the use in making all of these improvements to the intersection if you're not going to widen that road? Well, it may hasten our ability to widen Gun Club to the north. This is an interesting project, and I was able, even though the type of intersection it will be was selected, I was able to work through my contacts with DRCOG and get federal funding to come to this project, a total of approximately $19 million. And so for those folks that are concerned about the amount of federal taxes that they're paying, we were able to bring some back to Colorado specifically for that intersection, and I think that's a great thing. It's actually been under construction for quite a long time now. The first part of that project was burying some overhead lines and moving some water lines, and it is also going to result in the movement of the E470 off ramps to Quincy, at least the northbound. Is that westbound? I don't know. I always get that.
I think it's northbound.
It's northbound at that point, and that off ramp will be moved further to the south. So there's a lot of things going on at that intersection. It's been under construction. As of tomorrow, it's going to be closed. That intersection will be closed. There will be a detour through the toll gate crossing neighborhood down through Harvest and Bellevue back over to Gun Club Road. So if you can avoid traveling in that area for the next couple of days, word to the wise. We all remember, at least I do, when we had the air show out at the Quincy Reservoir, not the Quincy Reservoir, the Aurora Reservoir, and the traffic backups at that intersection. Many people who had tickets to that event never did get there. It's going to be a cone zone for a while, but it will be closed for 3 or 4 days, I believe it is. And it's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid really quick, even though it's 4 or 5 days that it'll be closed. But the alternative would be a a messy intersection for a much longer time. So we did make the decision to close that intersection. It's going to be great when it's finished. Like any roadway construction project, we're all glad when there's no more of those cones up and we learn the best way to get through the intersection. It may take a little bit of learning, but we'll have a lot of information being put out about that.
Great. And that actually feeds into our next question, which is how do you, meaning the board and the county, work with cities and towns on transportation issues?
Great question. There's a number of different ways we do that. The first way, the highest level, is at DRCOG, the Denver Regional Council of Governments. This is an organization, it's been in effect for many, many years. I'm a Denver native. I grew up in South Central Denver, went to South High School. And DRCOG was an important organization back when I was in high school. And that was a long time ago. And it's still around, and I'm honored to be Arapahoe County's representative on DRCOG. And so it's one of the ways. There's 58 different jurisdictions, cities, towns, counties that attend these meetings. I liken it to the UN. It's like a regional United Nations for local municipalities and counties. And so that's one way that we interact with our towns and cities. The other way is through what's called the Arapahoe County Transportation Forum. Now, this is an organization, this is a subgroup of DRCOG that was created to try to do more local prioritization of projects, of transportation projects. Which roads need work the most? Which roads and streets need to be expanded the most? Where do we need to spend money? That's really what it comes down to. A couple of the things that DRCOG has done is, if you know about the change that took place about a year or more ago on 225 southbound as it approaches I-25, the continuous lane from the last exit off of onto I-25 as it heads into I-25. That was an idea that went through DRCOG. So that's one way we've coordinated that with Greenwood Village and with many of the other towns and cities around that area. So that's what the Arapahoe County Transportation Forum does. And I am honored to chair that forum along with Mayor Pro Tem Sally Daigle from the city of Sheridan. So all 13 of our cities and towns participate in that, all the way from Deer Trail way out east, all the way to Littleton in the west. And it is a great way for us to get together with our public works directors, our transportation managers, and talk about where we need to prioritize funding for these projects. So hope that answers your question.
That's great. And we have a live question from Becky, who would like to ask you another transportation-related question. Becky, go ahead.
Okay, it's Jackie. But
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just wanted to find out in regards to transportation of possibly Murphy Creek and Traditions are growing as well. Is there ever going to be RTD transportation out to that area, which is like off of Gun Club and Jewel and going a little bit further north?
I'm very familiar with that area, Jackie. Yes, Adonia, Murphy Creek, Traditions, Cross Creek, all up in there. Even some of them a little bit further to the south there. Yeah, I agree. Gun Club, as it branches off of State Highway 30, right there by Buckley Air Force Base, and continues north and continues to Piccadilly and Powhatan and Harvest, all of those roads up there. You're right, it is growing, and it seems like they're building more and more houses, doesn't it? That is, majority of that area is, am I frozen? There we go. No, okay. Is located in the city of Aurora. And so we are very close partners with Aurora Public Works and the city council from Aurora on these projects. And we'll work, we do, in fact, like I said, Gun Club in Quincy is an example of those projects. Both Aurora and Arapahoe County are contributing money to that project. CDOT, while they're not, I don't know exactly what the split of the contribution of funds is. They're involved in the project because of County Road 30. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't know specifically those plans, but if you were to call our transportation manager, Jim Katzer, and if you look at our website under Public Works, Jim Katzer may be able to give you a better idea of what the plans are for those roads in that area.
Great. A question that is at least somewhat related to growth is the oil and gas development that is in our county is pretty much exclusively happening in the eastern part. The county and Public Works and so forth held another virtual event about a week ago that you were a part of. And what can you tell us about where we are with oil and gas and the process for deciding how to pursue that?
Yeah, that's a very controversial topic in Arapahoe County. Arapahoe County is not like Weld County or even Adams County to that, as far as the amount of oil and gas development that we have going on. We do have some oil and gas being developed in the eastern part of Arapahoe County. I don't believe that there are any wells inside of E470. All of the wells in Arapahoe County are on the outside or the eastern side of E470. And I know that we have a number of active wells that are out there, and there could be more being fracked. Established wells that were drilled many years ago and capped, and then now are being reopened and being fracked or horizontally drilling done to release and extract more of the resources from those wells. It can be controversial if it's close to folks' housing. It's also controversial because of the amount of traffic that it adds to the area, especially when drilling a new well. If they are drilling a new well, there's a very intense period of several weeks to a month in which large trucks are bringing in equipment and during the drilling process, and then they drill for a certain amount of time, and that eventually transitions to operations, which is where the derrick, the drilling derrick or drilling apparatus is taken out and it's turned into production. And again, we do have a couple of different things going on with that. Is many people remember that the state legislature passed a bill, Senate Bill 181, I think it was. Do you remember, Luke?
Yeah, I think that's right. That sounds right.
181, which gave more of that decision-making ability to local governments. So Arapahoe County, up to this time, relied on the COGCC to establish the rules and regulations such as setback, air monitoring, water monitoring, and things like that. Arapahoe County still does not have the resources to be able to monitor air or water, things like that. But we're looking at ways to transition and establish rules in our land development code. Up to this time, we had agreements with the different operators, the oil and gas operators, which required a number of things from them. There were requirements that they had to agree to follow in order to be able to develop their oil and gas resources in Arapahoe County. Those requirements had to do with noise, light, impact, road impact. Every well was asked to provide a $7,500 fee for road maintenance, just based on the number of wells. That was per well that were required to be provided. And way too many more requirements that I can even remember. But it was a document that got us about 10 years of agreements working with the oil and gas producers. And they've been pretty responsible in Arapahoe County. When we've had complaints about noise or light, they respond to us. They try to alleviate the additional noise through sound walls and things like that. They've been responsive to us. So we appreciate that of the industry. There are a lot of Arapahoe County residents that work for the oil and gas industry too. Our economy is very important to the county commissioners, and we know that the oil and gas industry does contribute to our economy. So we're very, we call it a balanced approach. We want to have a balanced approach with safety and security of our citizens being the number one priority. And the oil and gas industry has agreed to that. So we are in the process of looking at how to craft the wording of our land development code as it pertains to oil and gas development. And at the same time, we're looking at establishing more stringent and mandatory transportation impact fees, roadway impact fees from the oil and gas industry. So there's a lot of things going on. It's a very interesting time, and to be a county commissioner. And I take that responsibility of safety and security of our citizens very seriously. And again, we have to balance the economic benefit that oil and gas brings to Arapahoe County with responsible development.
And this follow-up question came in as you were speaking. Does the county make any money off of oil and gas production?
Make any money? That's an interesting question. You know, there are taxes being paid, property taxes. Oil and gas companies pay income taxes at a higher rate than residential, agricultural, commercial, or even into other industrial, because I consider oil and gas an industrial. So there are taxes being paid. They pay property taxes. Ad valorem taxes is how those are described. The roadway impact fees, the $7,500 per well comes into the county. But again, that's earmarked directly to address the impacts to our roads, road and bridge improvements. In fact, you know, Quincy or Watkins Road from Quincy to I-70, it was on the schedule to be resurfaced several years ago. And Arapahoe County, with the amount of taxes or money that we had earmarked for road and bridge improvements, wasn't able to resurface that entire road. And so one of the oil and gas operators finished that road for us. I think it was between $60,000 or $90,000 worth of work that they contributed to resurfacing Watkins Road. And that's the kind of thing that I talk about, the oil and gas industry being responsible, responsive, and sometimes going over and above to help Arapahoe County out. So they're very involved in our community. They're involved in our commissioners and mayors' youth awards. They've contributed money to the different charities and charitable organizations in Arapahoe County as well. So, did I completely answer the question?
Yes. And so I'm going to shift gears a little bit here, and the, the increase in homelessness around the metro area has been pretty obvious for the last couple of years, and it seems to be getting worse in light of the COVID crisis. So, a question from an online viewer is what the county and the board are doing to help combat the homelessness crisis.
Well, I appreciate that question because this is something that I am gradually becoming more involved in. It's a little bit outside my comfort zone. My background is law enforcement. I was a military police officer. I retired from the Army in 1993 as a chief warrant officer too. I was a CID special agent. Law enforcement is near and dear to my heart. I taught forensic science at the Community College of Aurora for many years, and I currently serve on the board of the regional crime lab, the new regional crime lab that has just been instituted. So law enforcement is near and dear to my heart, and I have to say I had a bias against homeless people that I'm gradually trying to learn more about the reasons behind why people become homeless. Now, I know that there's the easy answers are drug use, poor choices in financial dealings, alcoholism. There's any number of reasons why people become homeless, but it could be as simple as losing a job. Some people work at the lower end of the economic spectrum where their wages are such that if it totally is eliminated through COVID or other reasons why a business might let them go, they're one paycheck away from being homeless. And many of them do become homeless. So again, I'm learning more and more about this. To me, it's a safety issue because we have encampments of homeless folk that are springing up in Arapahoe County. It's becoming more and more common to see folks camping in areas. And I believe it's a safety issue because of sanitary conditions, because of perceptions of the community. And I do believe that it's a tragedy waiting to happen where somebody takes umbrage at the camp and tells people to leave and violence erupts. I don't advocate anyone going out and clearing a homeless camp themselves. I think that could be very dangerous. So I've gotten involved in it through one of my colleagues, Commissioner Jackson, is very involved in the homeless issue, and I'm learning more about it. I'm starting to get a better feel. I'm a problem solver. I would like to be able to say I contributed to solving the problem. It's a big problem though, and it's going to get worse in my view unless we do something. So what do we do? Well, I mentioned earlier that we do have hotel vouchers that we can give through our human services when somebody comes in to get food assistance or when they come in to inquire about temporary aid to needy families. Or to inquire at our Arapahoe Douglas Work Center about how to get a job, and we find out that they're homeless. There are services that we can provide to them, such as food, maybe a temporary shelter. We don't have any long-term shelters in Arapahoe County. So for that, what I hear from a lot of the homeless advocates is that as cities and towns in Arapahoe County do encampment sweeps and move the encampments out of Arapahoe County, they tend to move back to Denver. And there are more options for them in the city and county of Denver. But again, I just think the problem is getting larger and larger. So it's something that we need to focus on.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, Commissioner Jackson works closely with some of the programs we have, and our community resources and human services departments both have resources worth checking out for sure. We have about 10 minutes to go, so I'm getting a handful of sort of general COVID questions here that I think we can answer most of these. I'm going to combine a couple of them. One of them is asking, they're saying that they've heard Arapahoe County is considering turning the fairgrounds into a longer-term care facility for COVID. I know we've adapted it partially into an alternate care facility should the hospitals get overwhelmed. I don't know about a longer-term facility. And then the follow-up question to that is, will there be a county fair in 2021? So that's a two-parter for you.
I'm going to take the second question first and say I certainly hope so. I love the fair. I've been involved in the fair ever since its 100th anniversary, and I take part every single year in the fair. I love the fair. I love seeing the 4-H. I did participate this year in the 4-H events. I sponsored the belt buckle for the market champion goat, and little Miss Vetter won that and got the belt buckle. It was a beautiful belt buckle. So I certainly hope that we have a fair in 2021. And if there's any possibility, that's the way I will go towards, is having a fair. As far as a longer term facility, that hasn't come before the board that I can remember. I've been pretty diligent in attending as many of those meetings as I can, if not all of them. And I don't remember us talking about the fairgrounds being even mentioned as a longer term COVID related facility. Now, what we did initially in when COVID first outbreak, we turned it into an alternate care facility. We spent a whopping sum of $15,000, which is very small compared to our overall county budget. $15,000 to put up curtains, set up army cots, and have cubicles set up where COVID patients could be held on a temporary basis. I'm pleased to tell people that we haven't seen one patient come into that facility. It's still set up so that if the hospitals eventually do become overwhelmed, we could open it up and start seeing patients. It's designed for very short term. If someone were to contract the COVID virus, be treated in a hospital, and be deemed eligible by their physician to be released, but they may not be completely over the virus and they may still be contagious. This is what this facility was set up for them to come on a temporary basis and receive whatever treatment that they just heal without treatment, actually, and be completely get rid of the virus before they return home and endanger anyone else that's in their home. That's what this was designed for. And we've never used it, thank goodness, because the hospitals have not been overwhelmed. I will say that my feeling about this is that we need to keep it as a short-term alternate care facility, because it's one of the factors that the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment looks at when they approved our variances for houses of worship and for gyms and for the other variances that we've submitted. And so it's important for us to keep that, at least for the near future. As we all know, the COVID rates are going up. Right now, we're under notice from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment that our variances that they approved earlier this year are in danger of being rescinded because of our rates on the increase. So we're going to do everything that we possibly can to get those rates down, to get more negative people tested, because that's what they gauge this on, is the number of positive tests. So we need as many healthy people, even though they may be a little bit curious about whether they might have it or not, to go get tested, because the more negative tests we have, the better off we'll look to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So, yeah, no long-term use of the fairgrounds for COVID patients, as far as I'm concerned.
And that's a great lead into my next question. I'm going to combine a couple again. And I would also remind people to get the latest information about COVID numbers and the databases and so forth, and our status as a county and in our communities. You're encouraged to visit the Tri-County Health site, which is tchd.org. They do constant updates about where we're headed. And that leads me to these two questions, which are you partially answered one of them, which is how do you suggest we keep our communities open given where the state trends are going? And then are we canceling Halloween? I can tell you right off the bat, the county has a very detailed tip sheet for how to still have Halloween safely, and all the measures you should follow if you want to do that. But Commissioner, what are we learning this week about our numbers and how to keep them down?
You know, it's going to sound like a broken record. Wear your mask, wash your hands, keep 6 feet away from people. It really is that simple. I think part of the reason why our numbers are going up, we all have read about what happened at CU in Boulder, CSU in Greeley, Fort Collins, or I'm sorry, CSU in Fort Collins, UNC. We've heard about young people contracting COVID and them being sent home. And I don't know whether the numbers being reported are reported at college where they contracted the disease, or whether they're being reported when they get back down here and they seek help. I don't know how those things work, but our numbers are going up. We may have just gotten a little oversaturated with all these restrictions and staying at home and things like that over the holidays, the 4th of July, I know we saw a spike after the 4th of July. We saw a spike after Memorial Day. So it really is that we have to make sure that people are keeping it at the front of their mind, that people are focused on doing those 3 things: wearing their mask when they're in public, if they can tolerate them, washing their hands frequently and often, and again, keeping your distance from people, social distancing. So those are the things that you'll see a campaign from Arapahoe County trying to get our citizens to reinvigorate their efforts to do those 3 things. So again, yes on the county fair, and just doing what you've heard being told that we need to do, taking care of yourself. Let's face it, you're your own best medical practitioner. Your primary care physician can't be with you 24/7. Be an adult, be responsible, do what you need to do.
That's great. And we have time for one more, and I think this is a fitting ending. What are you most looking forward to once the COVID crisis is behind us?
You know, I haven't been to a restaurant in ages. I just, we were never really, my family, we're not really restaurant people. I mean, we don't eat out a whole lot. But I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to a good steak and just going out and, I mean, my family, my son lives with us. He's a basement dweller, and my daughter lives a couple blocks away, and so I get to see them and my granddaughter fairly often. Um, and so I'm not missing family per se. I can understand how that might be the first priority for a lot of folks that are separated from their families. But for me, a good steak, medium rare, ribeye. I have a good friend, Ken Morris, who loves ribeye steaks, and I've kind of caught that from him.
Well, and now I've caught it from the two of you. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner, and thank you to all of our guests who tuned in tonight. We will be doing a COVID-specific town hall tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, same phone number, same website. And then we will have more conversations with commissioners next week with Commissioner Holan on Tuesday and Commissioner Conti on Thursday. So thank you very much and have a good evening.